I helped my husband survive his lowest years. Then he called me his project. 3 days later, he texted me the apartment he was secretly renting with her. The apartment was beautiful in that cold, new and tall windows. Gray floors, black kitchen fixtures, a rooftop lounge, a gym downstairs. The listing said it was perfect for a fresh start, which felt dramatic for a place with no parking included. The rent was more than our mortgage. I remember blinking at the screen, trying to understand why Brian would send me something like that. Our house was small, older, and always needed something fixed, but it was ours. Or at least I thought it was ours in the way a marriage makes things feel shared, even when one person has carried more of the weight. Then another text came in. Wrong person. That was all. 2 words. My customer was still talking about whether the brown frames made her face look too round. My coworker, Rose, was answering the phone behind me. Everything around me stayed normal, which made it worse. The world did not stop just because mine cracked open. I locked my phone, smiled at the customer, and told her the brown frames looked softer than the black ones. My voice sounded normal. That scared me, because inside, I already knew. 3 days before that, Brian had sat across from me at our little dining table and told me he loved me, but he was not in love with me anymore. People always say they remember the big words. I remember the small things. The way his thumb kept rubbing the edge of his water glass. The way he would not sit fully back in the chair. The way he kept looking toward the hallway like he had already left the room, and I was just taking too long to notice. He said, "I think we've been stuck for a long time." I said, "Stuck how?" He sighed like I was asking him to carry something heavy. "I don't know. I just feel like I became someone else's project." I actually laughed because I thought I had misheard him. "Your project?" I said. He looked down. I knew that would sound bad. It sounds bad because it is bad. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I'm trying to be honest." Honest. That word came out of his mouth so gently, like he was giving me medicine instead of poison. I said, "I helped you because I loved you." "I know." "No, I don't think you do. I paid bills when you couldn't work. I drove you to appointments. I sat in the parking lot before interviews because you were shaking too hard to go inside. I told everyone you were just figuring things out when they asked why you missed another dinner, another birthday, another holiday. I carried things you were not able to carry." His jaw tightened. "That's exactly what I mean," he said. "I owe you too much. I can't breathe under it." That sentence landed harder than if he had said he hated me. Because how do you defend yourself against that? How do you explain that love is not supposed to become a debt? How do you explain that I never kept a scoreboard in my heart, even if I still had the receipts in my email because the bank does not run on feelings? I said, "Is there someone else?" He looked straight at me. "No." I waited. He said it again, slower. "No. This is about me." And like an idiot, I wanted to believe him. Not completely. Not deep down. But there is a part of you in marriage that keeps reaching for the version of the person who used to be safe. Even when they are standing in front of you with a knife in their hand, your brain still tries to remember when those hands held yours. Brian had not always been like this. When we first got married, he was funny in a way that made bad days easier. He made burnt grilled cheese and acted proud of it. He left notes on the bathroom mirror when I had early shifts. He once drove across town in a snowstorm because I said I wanted gas station hot chocolate and then complained the whole way home while smiling. Then things got hard. His anxiety got worse. He lost one job, then another. Some days he could not get out of bed. Some nights he sat on the edge of the bathtub with his head in his hands, saying he did not know what was wrong with him. I learned which breathing exercise helped. I learned which calls to make. I learned how to talk to bill collectors without crying. I learned how to make one paycheck stretch until it felt thin enough to tear. I was not perfect. I got angry. I snapped sometimes. I cried in the car before walking into the house so he would not see it. But I stayed. When he finally got steady again, I was relieved. I thought we had survived something together. That is the part that still embarrasses me. I was proud of him. I was proud of us. Then Brian started changing. At first, it looked healthy. He started waking up early to go to the gym. He bought better clothes. He stopped wearing the same faded hoodies and started buying shirts that needed to be steamed. He got his beard trimmed every 2 weeks. He changed his cologne. I told myself this was confidence. Then he started saying things that sounded copied from podcasts. "I'm trying to protect my peace. I need to stop living small. I feel like I've outgrown certain versions of myself." The first time he said that, I was folding laundry on the bed. I said, "Do I count as a certain version?" He gave me this tired little smile. "Don't do that, Clara." That was how he started talking to me near the end. Like I was being difficult for noticing the door closing. Hazel's name came into the house slowly. At first, she was just someone from work. Hazel said this place downtown has amazing coffee. Hazel thinks I should try trail running. Hazel told me about this book. Hazel is really good at seeing people clearly. That last one made me look up from the sink. I said, "Seeing people clearly?" He shrugged. You know what I mean. I did not know what he meant. Or maybe I did, and I hated it. I asked once if I had met her. He said, no, I don't think so. She's younger. You two probably wouldn't have much in common. It was such a small sentence, but it stayed with me. Not because she was younger. I could survive younger. I could survive pretty. I could survive confident. What I could not survive was the way he said it, like I had already been placed in another category. Old life. Old wife. Old version. After he told me he was not in love with me, he slept in the guest room. I did not sleep at all. The next morning, he acted careful. Not kind, exactly. Careful. He made coffee. He asked if I wanted toast. He said he did not want this to get ugly. I said, then don't make it ugly. He looked wounded, as if I had been unfair. By the time he accidentally sent me the apartment listing 3 days later, I had spent 72 hours trying to figure out whether my marriage was dying naturally or being killed by someone with a name. Wrong person. I stared at those words all afternoon. I did not confront him right away. I know some people will say I should have. Maybe they are right. But I was tired of walking into conversations unarmed while he had already rehearsed his lines. That evening, I came home before him. Our house looked painfully normal. 2 mugs in the sink. His running shoes by the back door. A pile of mail on the counter. The dogs came running like nothing had happened, tails hitting the cabinets, happy because someone they loved had walked through the door. I fed them. I changed clothes. I waited. Brian came home around 7. He kissed the top of one dog's head, not mine. He put his keys in the bowl, then saw me sitting at the table. His face changed. Just a little. Enough. He said, hey. I held up my phone. Who is the apartment listing for? He did not answer fast enough. Then he said, a guy from work. He's looking downtown. I said, what guy? Randy. He said it too quickly. I nodded slowly. So why did you send it to me? I was multitasking. Clara, it was nothing. Nothing. That word should be banned from marriages. I said, you told me there was no one else. There isn't. Then why does it feel like you're lying? His eyes went flat. I can't keep doing this, he said. I almost laughed again. Doing what? Answering questions about the apartment you accidentally sent your wife. He walked past me into the kitchen and opened the fridge. He did not even take anything out. He just stood there with cold light on his face. I need space, he said. You already said that. No, I mean real space. I looked at the phone in my hand. Downtown space. He shut the fridge. This is why I can't talk to you. That was when I knew I was done asking in a way that let him lie. I waited until he went upstairs. I waited until the shower turned on. Then I checked the bank account. We had a joint account for household bills. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, vet bills, boring married life. We also had separate accounts, but the joint one was supposed to be for us. The first thing I saw was a transfer I did not recognize. Not huge. Not life-ruining by itself. But enough to make my throat tighten. A deposit to a property management company downtown. Same week. Same amount as the apartment listing. I sat there at the kitchen table with the laptop open and felt something inside me go very still. He was not thinking about leaving. He had already started. And he had used our money. I took screenshots. I emailed them to myself. I downloaded statements. I do not even know how I stayed calm enough, but I did. It was like my body had finally stopped asking my heart for permission. Then I checked the phone bill. There was one number appearing over and over. Late nights. Early mornings. Lunch breaks. Weekends when he said he was driving around to clear his head. I copied it. I did not call it. I was not ready to hear her voice. The shower turned off upstairs. I closed the laptop and sat there in the quiet, listening to the pipes in the wall. Brian came down 20 minutes later in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair damp, looking almost peaceful. That made me hate him for a second. Not forever. Just one sharp second. He said, "Are you okay?" I said no. He leaned against the doorway. "I don't want us to become enemies." I looked at him and thought, "You should have considered that before you made me your obstacle." But I said, "Then stop lying." He said nothing. I did not confront him with the bank statement that night. I wish I could say it was strategy, but it was partly shock. I needed to know more. I needed to see how far he would go if he thought I still only suspected. The next morning, I told Rose I might need to take a personal call later. She looked at me for a second and said, "Is this Brian?" I must have looked surprised because she softened. "You've been walking around like you're waiting for bad news," she said. I wanted to say I already had it. Instead I said, maybe. Rose did not push. She just said, "If you need to step out, step out." That small kindness almost broke me. At lunch, I searched the property company name again and found the apartment building. Same listing. Same photos. Same stupid rooftop lounge. Then I did something I am not proud of. I searched Hazel. I found her social media in under 3 minutes, because people who post vague quotes about boundaries usually do not make themselves difficult to find. She was pretty. Of course she was. Not in a villain way. Just young, bright, styled, smiling in coffee shops, standing in front of murals, posting captions about becoming the woman she was always meant to be. One photo made my stomach drop. It was from a coffee shop downtown. Her hand was around a paper cup. On the table beside it was a man's hand. Brian's wedding ring was not visible, but I knew that hand. I knew the faint scar near his thumb from when he cut himself fixing our back gate. I knew the watch I gave him after he got his first stable job again. The caption said, "Some people feel like fresh air." I put my phone face down on my desk and stared at the wall. Fresh air. I had been the oxygen mask when he could not breathe. Now she was fresh air. That night, I checked his tablet. Before anyone jumps on me, yes, I know. Privacy. Boundaries. Trust. All of that sounds beautiful when you are not married to someone who is using your shared account to rent an apartment with another woman. The tablet was on the charger in the living room. He had left it logged in because Brian always assumed I would respect rules he was no longer following. The messages were not graphic. Somehow that made them worse. If I had found one disgusting photo, maybe I could have been angry in a clean way. But what I found was softer, sneakier, more humiliating. He told her he felt alive around her. He told her I only knew the broken version of him. He told her he wanted a life that did not feel like repayment. Then I saw her response. "You can't stay with someone just because she carried you through your worst years." I read that sentence 3 times. Carried you. So she knew. She knew enough to say that. She knew I had been there. She knew I was not some cold wife ignoring him at home. She knew there had been a worst years. And somehow, in their little love story, that made me the weight. There was another message from him. "She doesn't understand who I am now." Hazel wrote back, "Then maybe the apartment is your first honest choice." My first honest choice. I almost threw the tablet. Instead, I took photos of everything with my phone. Not screenshots from the tablet. Photos. Time, dates, names, the whole ugly little timeline. Then I put the tablet back exactly where it was. Brian came home late. He said he had gone for a drive. I said, "With Hazel." He froze. For 1 second, the mask slipped. Then he said, "What?" I put the tablet on the counter between us. "How long?" He looked at it, then at me. And the first thing he said was not sorry. It was, "You went through my messages?" I laughed. I did not mean to. It came out sharp and empty. "That's what you're leading with. You invaded my privacy. You used our money to pay an apartment deposit." His mouth opened, then closed. I said, "How long?" He looked away. It wasn't physical. I said, "I did not ask how proud you are of your technicalities." He flinched at that. "A few months," he said. "A few months of what?" "Talking. Apartment hunting?" He dragged a hand through his hair. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Brian? Did the apartment pick itself? Did our bank account accidentally pay the deposit?" His face hardened. "You know we were over." "No," I said. "I knew you were acting strange. I knew you were pulling away. I knew you were making me feel crazy for asking basic questions. I did not know my husband was building a soft landing with a younger coworker while telling me he needed to find himself." He said, "You always make yourself the victim." That one hit, but not in the way he wanted. Because suddenly I saw it. The whole thing. The new clothes, the gym, the little phrases, the way he rewrote our marriage until my love sounded like control. He needed me to be the villain so he could leave as the hero. I said no. I made myself the wife. You made me the fool. For the first time that night, he looked ashamed. Not enough. But a little. Then he said, "I was going to tell you." "When? After you signed the lease? After you moved in? After she picked the couch?" He said nothing. I went upstairs and locked myself in the bedroom. I did not sleep. He slept in the guest room again. The next morning, he tried to be calm. He said, "I think we should separate." I said, "We are." He looked relieved, which told me everything. Then I said, but not casually. Not quietly. Not with you deciding what is fair. His relief disappeared. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm calling a lawyer." He immediately started pacing. "Clara, come on. We don't need to make this ugly." I said, "You made it ugly. I'm making it documented." That was the first time I saw fear in him. Not fear of losing me. I wish it had been that. Fear of losing control of the story. The next few weeks were some of the ugliest of my life, and not because of screaming. Screaming would have been easier. It was the quiet ugliness. The careful emails. The fake concern. The friends who suddenly wanted both sides. The way Brian started telling people we had been unhappy for years. Years. Apparently, our marriage had been dead for years, and I was the last person invited to the funeral. Alice, one of our mutual friends, called me after he told her. She said, "He said you two just grew apart." I said, "Did he mention Hazel?" There was silence. Then Alice said, "No." I said, "Did he mention the apartment deposit from our joint account?" Another silence. "No," she said quietly. People changed after that. Not everyone. Some still hid behind neutral little phrases. Marriage is complicated. No one really knows what happens between two people. At least he's trying to be honest now. I hated that one the most. Honest now is just lying until the evidence arrives. Martha, his mother, called me one evening while I was packing his books into boxes. I almost did not answer. But some stupid old part of me still remembered holidays at her house, casseroles wrapped in foil, her hugging me when Brian got his first steady paycheck again and whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on him." I answered. She was crying. "Clara, honey, he is not doing well." I closed my eyes. Neither am I. I know, but he's spiraling. This is too much pressure. I looked around the living room. His things in boxes. My hands dusty. The dogs watching me like they knew something was wrong. Martha said, "Maybe if you two could talk without lawyers." I laughed once. She went quiet. I said, "Martha, he rented an apartment with another woman using our money. He told me it was just a place to clear his head. Then he can clear it with Hazel. That's not fair." "No. What's not fair is that I spent years helping him stand up, and now everyone wants me to cushion the fall again." She started crying harder. I felt cruel. I did. I am not proud of every word I said during that time. But I was done being the safe place for people who kept setting me on fire. When Brian came by to pick up some clothes, he asked about the dogs. "I want them on weekends," he said. I said, "We can discuss it through the lawyers." His face twisted. "They're my dogs too." I said, "Then you should have thought about them before renting an apartment that charges pet fees higher than our grocery bill." He said, "You're punishing me." I looked at him standing in the hallway of the house I had kept alive while he fell apart. "Yes," I said. "Maybe I am." He stared at me like he did not recognize me. Good. I barely recognized myself either, but I liked this version better than the woman who kept swallowing broken glass to keep peace at dinner. My lawyer, Vera, was the first person who made me feel like I was not insane. I sat across from her in a small office near downtown Akron with my folder of statements, receipts, messages, and emails. I kept apologizing for having so much. She said, "Don't apologize for records." Then she started sorting everything like my pain had finally become something useful. The mortgage payments from the year Brian was barely working. The car insurance. The medical bills. The credit cards. The private loan payments. The apartment deposit. The messages where he admitted he felt trapped by everything I had done for him. Vera looked up at me and said, "He wants this to be emotional. We're going to make it financial." That sounded cold. It also sounded like oxygen. Brian wanted a friendly divorce until he realized friendly did not mean I would hand him whatever made him feel less guilty. He wanted part of my retirement because some of it had grown during the marriage. Legally, he could ask. I hated that, but I understood it. What he did not expect was that I had proof of how much marital money had gone into keeping him afloat. He had always acted like my help was invisible because it came wrapped in love. But love paid real bills. Love transferred money. Love called the lender. Love picked up the extra shifts. Love said, "Don't worry, I've got it," so many times that he forgot "I've got it" still cost something. Mediation happened in a plain room with bad coffee and a clock that ticked too loudly. Brian sat across from me in a navy sweater I used to like. He looked tired. Hazel was not there, of course. Fresh air does not sit through legal meetings under fluorescent lights. Philip, the mediator, went through everything calmly. Brian's lawyer tried to make it sound simple. Two people grew apart. Shared assets. Fair division. Clean separation. Then Vera opened my folder. She did not make a speech. She did not need to. She laid out the numbers. The year I covered most of the mortgage. The money from our joint account used for his car. The medical expenses. The loan payments. The apartment deposit. The timeline between the emotional affair, the separation talk, and the downtown lease. Brian's face changed as each page came out. Not devastated. Offended. Like the worst thing I had done was remember. At one point, he said, "I never asked her to do all that." I turned to him. That was the emotional climax, at least for me. Not the apartment. Not the messages. Not even Hazel. It was that sentence. "I never asked her." I said, "You didn't have to ask. You were my husband." The room went quiet. He looked down. I said, "And now you're sitting here acting like I volunteered for a bad investment." Vera touched my arm lightly under the table, like a warning to stop talking. But I needed to say one more thing. I said, "You called me your project manager because I helped you survive. But the truth is, Brian, you liked being loved when it saved you. You only hated it when it reminded you what you owed." He did not answer. For once, he had no better version of the story ready. The settlement was not dramatic. This is not one of those revenge stories where the cheating husband loses everything and the wife walks into the sunset with a mansion and a new body. Real life is messier and less satisfying. But I kept the house. I kept most of my retirement. I kept the dogs. Brian took the apartment, some furniture, his car, and whatever story helped him sleep at night. He also had to return the apartment deposit to the joint account before final division, which was petty money compared to everything else, but emotionally it felt huge. Not because I needed the amount. Because for once, he did not get to pretend his fresh start was free. After he moved out fully, the house felt strange. Not happy at first. People think peace arrives like sunlight. Mine arrived like exhaustion. The first few nights, I slept on the couch because the bedroom felt too big and too haunted. The dogs kept climbing over me, confused by the new arrangement. I would wake up at 3 in the morning and listen for Brian in the hallway before remembering he was gone. I cried over stupid things. His mug in the back of the cabinet. A receipt from a dinner we had after he got one of his jobs. A pack of razors under the sink. The silence was not instantly comforting. Sometimes silence is just where the truth gets louder. But slowly, it changed. I painted the kitchen a soft green because Brian had always said green made rooms look old. I moved the dining table closer to the window. I bought new sheets. I changed the locks. I stopped checking whether his laundry was in the hamper because his laundry was not my problem anymore. One Saturday, Rose came over with takeout and helped me carry boxes to the garage. She found an old framed photo of Brian and me at a fall festival. He had his arm around me. I looked tired even in the picture. Rose held it up and said, "Do you want this?" I looked at it for a long time. Then I said, "No." She put it gently in the trash, like it was something that had died. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Alice called me. I almost did not answer because I was done receiving updates about Brian. But curiosity is not the same thing as weakness, and I was still human. Alice said, "I heard something." I said, "If it's about him getting married, please let me finish my coffee first." "No," she said. "Hazel left him." I did not say anything. Alice continued, quieter now, like she knew she was handing me something sharp. Apparently the apartment wasn't what she thought. He was anxious all the time. Money got tight. He wanted her to help with rent. He was calling her during work having panic attacks. She told someone she couldn't be his therapist. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Brian had called me his project, and looked out at the backyard. The dogs were chasing each other near the fence. I should have felt victorious. Part of me did. I am not going to lie and pretend I became some saint after divorce. I ordered Thai food that night. I opened wine. I watched trash TV with both dogs pressed against me, and when one of the women on screen threw a drink at her cheating boyfriend, I laughed so hard I scared myself. Then I cried. Not because I wanted Brian back. I cried because Hazel got to leave after 3 months of the version of him I had carried for years. She got to call it too much. She got to decide she was not his therapist. She got to walk away from the same weight I had been told made me controlling, suffocating, bitter, and impossible. And I realized karma does not always feel like justice. Sometimes it feels like confirmation. It tells you that you were not crazy, but it does not refund the years. It does not give back the woman who learned to make herself smaller so a struggling man could feel less ashamed. It does not erase the nights I sat outside interviews with him, whispering, "You can do this," while he breathed into his hands. It does not erase the way he later used those same years as proof that I had trapped him. But it gave me something. It gave me the truth without his editing. It gave me my house without his shadow in every room. It gave me mornings where nobody made their mood my assignment. It gave me money that stayed where I put it. It gave me the dogs sleeping at my feet, the kitchen painted green, and the strange calm of knowing I did not abandon him at his lowest, but I also did not have to let him drag me back there just because I once promised forever. Then last week, Brian emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. Formal. Careful. Like he was applying for forgiveness. He said he had been reflecting. He said he was sorry for the way things happened. He said he understood now that I had done more for him than he appreciated. He said he missed our friendship. Then he wrote, "No one ever understood me the way you did." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Because once, it would have pulled me right back in. Once, I would have heard loneliness in it. I would have pictured him sitting alone in that expensive apartment with the gray floors and the rooftop lounge, finally realizing fresh starts still require you to bring yourself. Once, I would have answered. I would have comforted him. I would have softened the landing. I would have made his regret easier to carry. Instead, I deleted the email. Then I emptied the trash folder, because apparently I needed the extra click. Maybe that makes me petty. Maybe it makes me cold. Maybe some people will say I punished him for changing, or that I only loved him when he needed me. Maybe others will say I should have replied for closure. But I think some people confuse closure with one last chance for someone to make you responsible for their feelings. I loved Brian when he was broken. I loved him when there was nothing glamorous about it. When there were bills on the counter and panic in his eyes and no younger woman calling him fresh air. I loved him when he could not love himself. And when he finally felt strong enough to stand, he looked down at the person who helped lift him and decided I was the weight. So I kept the house. I kept the dogs. I kept the records. I kept my silence. And when his apology finally came, I let it disappear without giving him one more piece of me. Was I wrong for making the divorce difficult, keeping what I could prove was mine, and deleting his apology without answering?